With Trump kicking off his second term with strong momentum, let's take a look at the 2026 Senate map and see where Republicans can continue to make gains in Congress. Right now, Trump's more popular now than at any point in his political career, which is encouraging for Republicans as the midterms approach. Returning to the map, the Senate looks very different than it did 6 years ago when these seats were up for election in 2020. After the 2020 Senate races, we ended up with a split 50-50 Senate. This is what Joe Biden faced when he began his first term in office. However, looking ahead to 2026, Republicans are starting off with a significant advantage, holding 53 seats compared to the Democrats' 47. They can lose 3 seats and still maintain the Senate majority. Unfortunately for Democrats, there isn't really a single vulnerable Republican-held seat right now, but there are several Democrats in shaky positions. Let's start with the solid seats for both parties. These are the seats that will go to either the Democrats or the Republicans by 12 points or more. This is where we have solid incumbents running for re-election in safe blue or safe red states. Starting with the safe states for the GOP, we have Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. In Texas, John Cornyn will be up for re-election, and considering Trump's strong performance in the Lone Star State in 2024, there's no doubt Republicans will hold on to this Senate seat, likely by a solid margin. We also have Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, and South Carolina. With these solid Republican seats filled in, the GOP is at 47, just 3 away from the 50 minimum they need. For Democrats, many of the safe seats from 2020 or even 2022 are no longer safe. We saw significant shifts to the right in states like New Jersey, New York, and Illinois. However, there are still 5 solid blue states on this map: Oregon with Jeff Merkley, Illinois with Dick Durbin, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Delaware. So, with the solid states filled in, Republicans are at 47 and Democrats at 39, showing that the GOP is in a much stronger position. Now, moving on to the likely states, where races will be decided by margins of 5 to 12 percentage points. These races will be more competitive than the solid states, but it would still be a surprise if they voted the other way. Starting in the Midwest with Iowa, Joni Ernst is running for re-election. There are some Republicans who want to challenge her in the primary, but if Trump endorses her, she's expected to win re-election. Iowa is likely to go red no matter who the Republican nominee is, so it's a likely seat for the GOP. In Alaska, Dan Sullivan is also running for a 3rd term. He's likely to win the Republican primary, but he'll face Mary Peltola, who was elected in 2022. She's a strong candidate for Democrats, but I expect Sullivan to hold on to his seat. The other 2 seats that will likely go to Republicans by at least 5 points are currently held by appointed senators. In Ohio, John Husted was appointed by Governor Mike DeWine to replace J.D. Vance, and he's likely to win his re-election. In Florida, Ashley Moody was appointed by Governor Ron DeSantis to succeed Marco Rubio, and if she is renominated, she should win easily. Florida is no longer a competitive state. Next, we have the likely blue states for Democrats, where races will also be decided by 5 to 12 points. In Colorado, John Hickenlooper is on track to win a 2nd term. He was first elected in 2020, and Ben Ray Lujan in New Mexico is also expected to win a 2nd term. Up in the Northeast, we have Jeanne Shaheen in New Hampshire and Cory Booker in New Jersey, both expected to win their re-elections. With the solid and likely seats filled in, Republicans are at 51 and Democrats at 43. I expect all the results I've filled in so far to be pretty much locked in, meaning Republicans are likely to hold on to the Senate majority. The last few Senate cycles have been quite competitive. In 2020, 2022, and even 2024, many thought the races would be close, but Republicans ended up winning key seats. We saw John Tester, Sherrod Brown, and Bob Casey lose their seats, which was a big surprise. Additionally, Joe Manchin announced his retirement before even entering the primary. With 4 incoming Democrats ousted in 2024, we might see a few more losses in 2026. There are also some retirements to consider, which we'll discuss shortly. Now, let's look at 2 lean Democratic states that I currently don't expect to be among the most competitive: Minnesota and Virginia. In Minnesota, Tina Smith is likely to run for re-election. She's the favorite, but it will be very close. The presidential election in Minnesota was tight, and that was with Tim Walz, the state's governor, on the ballot alongside Kamala Harris. So I expect Minnesota to lean Democratic, with a margin of 1 to 5 points. In Virginia, Mark Warner is running for re-election as well. There's some talk about Governor Glenn Youngkin, who will be term limited after 2025, possibly running for this seat. If he does, it could spell trouble for Democrats. As of now, Warner looks okay. But Virginia is going to be lean Democratic. Now we're left with the 4 most competitive seats of the 2026 cycle: Michigan, Maine, North Carolina, and Georgia. Starting with North Carolina, we have the least uncertainty here. Tom Tillis is likely to run for re-election to a 3rd term. He defeated Cal Cunningham in 2020, and that was largely due to Cunningham's scandal just before the election. If that hadn't happened, Cunningham might have won. Tillis is seen as the weaker of the 2 senators from North Carolina, with Ted Budd being the other, who was elected in 2022. Tillis is likely to face significant primary challenges, especially since he's not the biggest supporter of Trump. If Trump backs another candidate in the primary, Tillis could be in trouble. However, even if Republicans nominate someone else, they are still favored in North Carolina. The state has leaned Republican in recent elections, and it generally trends that way unless the GOP nominates a poor candidate. In Maine, Susan Collins is up for re-election. She's currently in her 5th term and is the longest-serving member of Congress in Maine's history. While she's relatively popular, she's not as well-liked among Republicans as she used to be. She voted against the confirmation of Pete Buttigieg for Secretary of Transportation, which didn't sit well with some in her party. In 2020, she won her race by a surprising margin, but that was after a lot of Democratic money was poured into the race. If Republicans stick with Collins, she has a good chance of winning. If they choose someone else, it could be a mistake, as Maine is more liberal than conservative. In Georgia, we have another exciting race. Jon Ossoff will be on the ballot again. He was elected in 2020 alongside Raphael Warnock, who was re-elected in 2022. Ossoff defeated Republican incumbent David Perdue 4 years ago, and he's seen as a strong Democratic incumbent. However, Georgia is a challenging state for any Democrat. There's a lot of speculation about Governor Brian Kemp running for this seat, since he will be term limited in 2026. If he does, he would be a formidable opponent for Ossoff. If it's someone else, Ossoff's chances improve, but Georgia is still leaning Republican. Finally, we have Michigan, which I believe will be the most competitive race in the country. With Gary Peters not running for re-election, this opens the door for Republicans. Peters was first elected in 2014 and narrowly won re-election in 2020 against John James, who is now serving in the House. Without Peters, Democrats lose that incumbency advantage, making it easier for Republicans to take the seat. Michigan is incredibly competitive, and with Trump winning there in 2024, Republicans have a real chance if they run a strong candidate. So to wrap it all up, my first prediction for the 2026 Senate map shows Republicans potentially winning 55 seats, while Democrats could hold on to 45. If things continue as they are, with Trump maintaining his solid approval and Republicans choosing the right candidates, they could flip both Michigan and Georgia. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this analysis, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this. I'll see you in the next video.